Hey everybody, and hello my camel friends, welcome to another episode of Planet Coaster. Today with a little tutorial, and this is not just for a reason called advanced building tutorial, because I'm not going to go into the basics of the game. So this tutorial is for those who already play the game quite a lot, who already are familiar with the basic controls, who do know how to use the advanced move tool and so on and so forth. This tutorial is for really building better in terms of efficiency, in terms of planning, in terms of how you can build stuff together, and also it makes use of the latest additions to the game, because I feel like I was just checking a few tutorials on YouTube, and obviously there are great tutorials, and I'm gonna mention some of those tutorials in this video. I'm gonna link them all in the description below, because some parts I'm not going to tackle because there are definitely tutorials that are way better than mine, and this means I'm going to link you there because this makes more sense. But there are a few things which haven't been talked about since they've been implemented to the game lately, and they changed the kind of way you can build in the game quite dramatically, I have to say, and I haven't found a tutorial on that yet, so I thought, okay, it's about time to make this. But let's jump right in and let me just show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing what we're going to talk about is the basic way how you can make buildings. And by making buildings, I'm not talking about the shape or the house or whatsoever. I'm talking about the element in the game. And if we just look at those things lying around here, you can pretty much see this on the left hand side here. If I click on it, you can see it's called building 8181. Jeez, is it that often that I made a building in that park already? This is frightening. Anyways, this is a building, and you can click on R on your keyboard or on this little pen icon over here to enter it, and then you are in the building mode. The building mode is always displayed by having this grid here, and you can obviously also change the grid. You just have to at least move things once for whatever reason. Then you have access to the grid options, and you can change the size of the grid up to 1 meter, which is the smallest one. With some tricks you can make it even smaller, but I'm not going to go into this because this doesn't really help in what I'm going to show you. So what is interesting about a building is that you have access to the grid. So first of all, the grid seems to limit your way of building in terms of freedom, because you basically have only 2 axes to move things along, as long as you use the moving options of the grid. So let me just show you what I mean. If we are grabbing this stuff together, an important thing is that we have to grab this little pillar over here as well, because this is the element that makes the grid available. And if we copy something with Control D, you can see I'm moving this alongside the grid. This is very important to know if you want to build parallel. So if you want to make sure that everything is perfectly aligned, it is very helpful to always use these things. This is nothing really new, but I always like to start with this because I see a lot of people on YouTube building without using this and then just moving it along. And talking about this, I'm especially showing this because of the following thing. If I'm only choosing this set of pieces without this one, and I'm also using copy D, which is again Control D, you are moving this completely free, and you can just rotate that completely free. You can rotate things on Y. As you can see, I'm just rotating that now completely 180 degrees free without any issue at all, and you can basically put it wherever you want on the map. The thing is about that, if you want to make it fit into the completely perfect position next to it here, you can do it with Control X. And as I said, I'm not going to explain about the controls. You basically know these already. But what you can see, the advanced move tool is still, or the gizmo, how we like to call it as well, is still not properly fixed. That means you can't really move it perfectly straight. And what happens then is, well, you know, it doesn't really fit here because you have to move it completely perfectly fine here, and it's quite a work. You can see it's taken quite a while to make this. And now I intentionally made a little mistake, because you can use the grid to make this perfectly aligned. The thing is, you have to work properly with the grid, and this is the first lesson, so to say, in this tutorial. Make sure that you make the best use of the grid and plan it ahead, because what I did here is completely wrong. I used this, and if I now copy it over, you can see it's not aligning perfectly because the step of the grid is too big, and it, you know, either way it just goes too far in or it's too far off. You can change that by simply doing the following. You can just go in and move this thing in entirely perfectly onto this line. Oops, wait a second. There we go. So now you have aligned this to one of the grid things, right? The thing is, you can't really make sure that it is perfectly aligned on this hand side. So what you could do is you could fully rotate that. So let me just show you this. If you just rotate that now and fit that in, you are perfectly, at least in terms of this direction, you are perfectly aligned, and then you could just move it in exactly where you want it. That's unfortunately the only reason, the only chance you have, because as soon as a piece is not perfectly 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meter, or like 3.5 meters wide, it gets some problems, but you can see already how you can make use of the grid. So plan that ahead, make sure that things are really fitting perfectly into your grid, and then you can make use of the grid as best as possible. And I would highly recommend to train that. It's, you know, there is not the perfect way to do it, but it is very important to use the grid to your advantage, because it offers some of them things in the game that you would need to. The second thing I want to show you, we have a collection of wooden pieces, and as you can see from those things, I quite like to build wooden statues, and I'm going to talk about this quite a lot, because a few things in the game made it quite hard to build these kind of things. So what I used to do before I was building stuff like the little T-Rex over here, or these elephants, I used to put down every piece I like to use. The problem about that was that I always, if I copied them around, I copied them from the origin, and then I needed to fit them in again and again and again, and it was hard to recolor them because I needed to select them first, and so on and so forth. It's quite a hassle, but what's pretty new to the game is we have the cool thing that we can now finally tag pieces. So what would be way more easy than what I just did over here, slapping those things down, is just go to the building mode. Oh wait, I just should have opened the building mode, and then you just go in and create a custom tag, and this is now doable via this one over here. You can go into custom tags and add a new tag, and now let's call these wooden pieces, just for the sake of this tutorial. Now I'm going to choose not all of those because I just wanted to show you, but what you can do now is you can go basically in these areas where you want to go, and then just click on those pieces you need to add the tag. You use the existing tags wooden piece, and you can basically do this with all these pieces. It seems to be a lot more complicated and time consuming than just putting them down to the bottom, but I'm gonna show you why this is the best way to do it and why this is better. So obviously you can also use, if you want to, you can also use the search function. If you just go in and type in wooden, you will have a selection of wooden pieces. The problem though is that it doesn't display all pieces that you would like to have, because for example, let me just show you these pieces, for whatever reason the naming is not really consistent in the game. So in this time you have luck, or you're the lucky one, that these are all called wooden. But what I found as well is that, well, for example, where is the other one? Okay, these are all perfect examples. I wanted to show you something else. Is it in pillars? I guess it was in pillars. There we go. Yeah, here we go. So this is called Haunted House Pillar Top, or the Haunted House Pillar Base, or okay, these are called wooden again. But you've also other things that are also made out of wooden, but they are not called wooden, so you won't actually find them. For example, this one, vintage column, 4 meter narrow. This is also a pretty nice wooden piece you could use, but it's not called wooden. So what you would do is then, before you start building in general, just put the tag in, and if you're done, you can just go into filters, use your wooden pieces tag, and you have all in here. And there's also another example which I'm going to show you in a second now, because let me just keep that open. So if we go in here and we want, for example, this piece, and we want to put it onto this one, you can see that it is kind of using the orientation from kind of align to surface. That's perfectly fine. But what happens in the game quite often is also, as soon as you've used that a few times, the kind of angle it uses the align to surface kind of breaks for whatever reason. I don't really know what that is, but if you want to use it again and use it again, then it doesn't work. But as soon as you go into the building mode and you have the filter applied, there we go, you can pretty easily always use the kind of world orientation that the piece has. So it will always stick perfectly to the wall rather than just using the orientation it has from lying down here. It is fairly hard to reproduce actually, but you can trust me that this is the better way to do it, simply because you can access those pieces always from the menu. You don't have them lying around all the time, and we are coming later to kind of the usage of different building parts, which then makes things also easier. But yeah, as I said, the tagging system is really important. Make use of it because it will really help you later on in your building progress, and it makes things a lot quicker than it used to be before. But now we are moving on to the next part of this tutorial, and asking for that like for a million years, but they changed quite a bit to it, which is pretty nice. So before we had this option, what you used to do if you have this kind of little patch of nature, you would go then into blueprints, and then you would go to your blueprint that was called nature. What's that even? A bush collection. Alrighty, I don't know that. So then it would be that. You would just put that down, and you would do the same. Just grab it from your menu, put that down. But the thing is, it's pretty annoying always to click into the menu. So it would be nice to have this as a building. What you then needed to do back then was you needed to do the following. You need to go into your menu, search for a piece that you kind of need to make a building, which is then with the bluish grid behind it. You would use that, just, whoops, where is it? Put that down, and then just select everything and merge this into a building. This option is still available, but you don't really need to do that. All you need to do is use the multi-selection tool, and then, whoops, why did I even select that tree over there? And then you can just simply go in and merge this scenery into a scenery group. The cool thing about a scenery group is that it actually works as a building, but you can have full access to the world gizmo. That means, in comparison to a normal building like that, which uses grid pieces, if I click the copy button here as well, you only have the option to rotate that alongside 2 axes, move it obviously into all directions. But the cool thing about this group now is you can also rotate this into all directions, which makes building with those things a lot easier, and it gives you access to simply copy paste it by Control D, and this is way quicker than just using it from the menu all the time. The cool thing also is you can make slight variations in the tilting of the building, which makes also it looks a little bit more different. And now even better is you can select all of these and merge them into one single scenery group, which is pretty handy actually. If you, for example, just copy a few things over and then let's call you want to make a more versatile patch of nature, and we're just going to do that right now. We're just going in here. Let me just quickly delete this tree. We can also get rid of all the arches, by the way. They're just here for scale. We are going to talk about scale quite a bit later on with the archer, but yeah, for now this is how you do it. And then we are just going to simply select a tree over here. Just whoops, just align to surface is maybe not the best thing to do right now. There we go, like have a little bit of a nature patch. But at the moment we have 3 different groups, which we don't want to because we want simply to copy this one now. So make use of the copy option as much as possible. So we can simply move them into one group. If you want to get rid of the group for whatever reason, I don't know why you would like to, but you can now. This is very cool. You can now ungroup things. And now you can see each individual piece is individual again, which is cool. Because I don't know why I don't know why I would use it. Maybe you want to have just your scenery floating around and not connect this to a building. What is actually cool though, you can deconnect things from blueprints you want to make. So if you think, okay, I don't need the nature here, you can just ungroup it and done. But yeah, as I said, pretty simple. Just group it, and you can again just duplicate it and put that in. Make the same over here, for example, and there you're good to go. You have your nature in it. Now you can just simply go in and change slight variations of it just to make sure that it doesn't look as you know, repetitive as it used to look at the beginning. So this is what you can do also with the tilt option now. You can just make sure that this is a little bit more differently tilted and already looks a bit different. So that's, you know, that's really something to keep in mind, the usage of grouping things now, because we have, as I said, we have groups and buildings. Now, coming to the buildings, the things changed not too much actually, but there is something I always want to remind you guys of, and this is the usage of different buildings and groups to make sure that you achieve the best results. So as you can see from this building over here, it has several elements, and I'm just going to move them all out a little bit so that you can see those different elements of the building. This might not be the most impressive example of what you can do with it, and you know, that's something, for example, I don't even know, can we merge buildings as well? Oh, we can. This is pretty awesome. So, wait. What I need to do is then just make sure that I move this one in, because that's pretty ridiculous to have. Oh, well, anyhow, it doesn't really look that nice. But it's good to know. I really didn't know that we can merge buildings as well. That's good to know. So you can actually merge buildings as well, which is pretty awesome, because then it makes building even better. I wonder if we could merge those two. I mean, that shouldn't be possible at all. Let me just check. No. Okay, you can only merge buildings that are on the same grid. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I just wanted to check if that's possible or not. But yeah, what's the advantage of having multiple building pieces? Well, I think the biggest advantage is to be more flexible in terms of the orientation and the rotation of grid pieces, because if you have, as I said, if you have a grid piece, it always only rotates towards oh, no, it's not rotation, basically the problem. The grid means you only have two axes available, which is then making the whole thing look pretty rectangular, and you can't really do much about it, rather than just you maybe want to just use different pieces that are not connected to the grid to make sure that it doesn't look, you know, blocky and rectangular. What you can do though is you can just create different pieces and then use the rotation function of a building in general, which is completely free, and then you can just make kind of roundish structures out of building pieces as well. So that's really quite handy to keep in mind, that you use different elements, and make sure also to use those elements to your advantage. So for example, if I use this one to make sure that I have a good backside of the building, to put that all in, and then I could make the front pieces with a lot more detail and then just move them together. It makes also the access to the interior a lot easier if you can just move it out. Just, you know, just imagine this would be kind of a puppet house or something. But there's not, you know, again, there's no golden rule how you should build these pieces together. The important thing about that is that you really make sure that you use different building elements to make yourself an easier life, and just in terms of how you can move them around, and you know, to make it not all too finicky within one building, because if you just click on pieces and delete them and so on, it's, you know, deleted in the entire building. So you can just simply adjust, slide things. So for example, if I want to have like a little bit of a narrow alley in between, I could just move the building over and I have it. If that would be connected inside the building, or maybe I can just show you. We can't really merge them together because, okay, obviously these weren't building pieces. That's why I was able to merge them into this one. But yeah, let's say, for example, I want to move this dormer over here, you know, these two elements, and I'm pretty sure that these are okay. In this case, that's pretty simple. I should show it to you in this building. So I knew that I don't want to move them again, but if I would move them quite often, it would make total sense to make an own standing building out of them. The problem now is, if I want to select that, you can see I'm just selecting so much other crap with it, and I'm just basically destroying the whole building. So what I used to do is, and this is another little trick, and I hope you guys will enjoy this trick because it makes life so much simpler. Or easier, I should say. So if you want to have just the window, I'm just selecting those, make sure that you have selected them, move them out, and make sure to copy them and not just move them, and just deleting everything you don't really need. That's pretty easy by just deleting stuff which is directly close to it, and then you can just use the multi-select tool to delete the rest of it. And now, there we go. This is something very cool now, because I showed you already that you can make simply buildings out of everything, and you can ungroup things as well, right? So this is what we make use of now. We are going to select this and make sure that there is no grid piece in. Now you hit M on the keyboard, which is the move button, and this is very important because it doesn't work with moving it alongside the advanced move. You need to move selection, and there you go. As soon as you just move it closely to another building, there is this little info popping up, which is called add to building 315, 260. I don't want to actually move it into a building because that's not what I need. I need to move that into a group. So you can choose whatever group you want, but it's important that you have created a group beforehand. I'm just putting that to this group now, and this group is the group 1 and 3. Just click. And the important thing is don't click again, because you need then to move this thing outward so that it's far away from the other stuff. Now, this is in the scenery group 103. Now you might wonder, what is this guy even doing with it? Because now it's in this group and what the fuck and so on. Yeah, but now you can, and this is why this is a very handy button, now you can ungroup the selection. And now you can just select this one and group it again, and you have a simple building piece over here. What you can actually move alongside the axis, you can just put in another if you want to. Let's say you just want to have this one on top of this one, for example. For whatever reason you wanted to do that, but you can. So you have it here. And now the advantage is, if you want to move that, you can click on the building, or you can just simply click on this group. You could even go and, call that one dormer, for example. And you would be simply able to just copy it from that position, copy that over, and there we go. And now the cool thing is, and let me just show you again because that makes perfect sense. If you're done and you think the position is fine and you don't want to have a million different buildings, for example, if you make a blueprint, you have to make sure that you have less than 10 overall buildings, I guess. So because otherwise you can't make a blueprint out of them, even though they are below 4,000 pieces. So what you need to do then is just select those two and click add to scenery group, and it is already in this group. Bam! That's as easy as it goes. You made a mistake, don't worry, just hit Control Y, it will make, or Control that, to redo the action, and it's done. So it makes so much sense now to have the option to ungroup things. It's like a little bit of a workaround, but I think it's really worth it, and I started also to build that way. So if you, for example, want to build a dormer, or let's say any given piece of a building you have multiple pieces of, which is made out of multiple pieces rather than just using one of these dormers, pre-made ones I made over here, it is super handy to make a scenery group out of them before you put them into the building, because you can simply move them around without having to look at which other pieces you select, without destroying the overall shape. So it makes perfect use of the layer system in the game, and yeah, that makes super sense to me at least, and I hope to you guys as well. But now we are continuing with a little bit of scale school. And I have to say, you can pretty much see how I messed up scale in the past, and I'm not even gonna lie, this is seriously bad sometimes, but at some point I couldn't do much about it. But for example, this archer is like the perfect piece, and like most of the builders are also making fun of it. I believe Jonty even has a t-shirt in his merchandising store, where you can build basically the school of scaling, and you have this archer on this one. Because the cool thing about this archer is, and this is why we use the archer, this is the most accurate representation of the guest size we have in the game. Some of the other animatronics are a bit too big, a bit too high, a bit too tall, but this one is like perfectly fine, and you can also just deactivate him because it's annoying AF if he's going to shoot all the time. So you would always use this little archer, and this is why it stood next to everything to use it. And I can show you just by putting him next to this one. So this is how I made the T-Rex as well. You just put him here and you would see, okay, that's a pretty big sign, but it somehow it is realistic, right? It is in the perfect height. It is just perfectly fine. The statue itself is a tiny bit too big, actually. I mean, this is way bigger than an actual T-Rex would have been. It's actually nearly 8 meters or whatsoever. That's, Jesus Christ, that's big. Anyhow, but it's a lot better than my elephants, because these are like the I don't know, radioactively changed gigantic elephants, whatever. But the thing about this is, and you know, you can see that this worked a lot better when I used the archer for the T-Rex build, and I could also make sure that it is not as completely overwhelmingly big as these elephants. I mean, these elephants look gorgeous, right? They look super amazing. I'm still very happy with the outcome, but in terms of size, I mean, you could argue if it is a statue, you can make the statue oversized. That's perfectly fine. But if you go for buildings, it would actually make sense to at least keep a little bit of the overall size. And also my Main Street buildings, even though I like them a lot, they are too tall, actually. So if you take this one, I mean, I think that's pretty much, we are nearly talking about 10 meters or whatsoever. Yeah, I think 10 times the height of a person, something like that. And just put them on top of it. Not actually, but you know, it's way too high. I believe this one is 1.8 meters, so yeah, we are going ridiculously high. So it's a tad bit too high. But you can also use this as an orientation. This is just a little building building trick. I can just recommend to use this archer for like everything you build. Just put it next to it to make sure that you kind of keep the dimensions. We all know that some of the pieces in Planet Coaster force you into building bigger, and you have to find crazy workarounds to make sure that it is somehow in size. But yeah, the archer just in general helps a lot. And now, guys, we are coming to the final thing, which is very advanced, but I made good usage of it lately for something I can't really show you because it's not entirely done yet, but it just turned out to be working like a charm since the latest update with the grouping option. So let me show you what I mean with this little guy over here. When I was building this thing, I was using different buildings inside this T-Rex in general. So I was making this food over here entirely in one building. I made the body in one building, I made the neck in one building, and I made the head in one building to make sure that I can move this a little bit later on. The problem though is I was only able to make buildings out of it, and well, having buildings really isn't that great because building can only be rotated alongside the two basic axes you have available in the building. So you can only rotate that alongside the X or Y axis. You can't really rotate another axis, which makes, you know, movement of a head or something really problematic. And what you can do right now is I'm going to show you by just testing. I don't know if I can get it done, but what I need to do is exactly the same I just showed you with the dormer over here. You're just going in here, just make a group out of it, move that over. Oops, why didn't I move that over? Cool, game, what are you doing with me? Just let me go back into the building. Make sure that you try to select as less as possible, and it would be even more intelligent to start over with that before before you try to do it later on in the way I do it right now, because this is pretty much very unprofessional and not really working the way it should be working. So what you need to do is move it outwards, so it is piece of this group now. Same thing as before, make sure to ungroup the group. Oops, just select the head, make it into a scenery group, and then you can just move it back into position, for example. You just need to make sure that you kind of go perfectly fine into this position. And if you would consider that beforehand, you know, things would be so much more easy and not that finicky like it is for me right now, because when I was building the T-Rex, I haven't had that option. But I'm going to show you why it is so good. So now you have the T-Rex, right? And I needed to make sure that the overall look and feel, how the head is positioned and so on, had been done before. So I needed to build the head already into slightly tilt. I needed to build the head already exactly the way I wanted it to have. If I would have had the options we have now, I could have just built a straight head, like use the copy paste options, use the grid, use the, I don't know, rotation availability in a building mode, then merge it into a scenery group, and then you can do the following, because now as it is a scenery group, we can just rotate that alongside every axis. I can even make like the head rotation if I want to. So for example, it's just looking down a tad bit over here, and there we go. That looks a lot more frightening to me. There we go, perfectly fine. So, I mean, it's not perfect because I should have just got rid of the neck, and I should have made the neck a single building as well. But yeah, that's how it works. And if you just do it with everything, you can just create several positions of this statue pretty easily, just like in basically like an animation, I have to say. You can even make that move in here a bit more nicely, so like that it doesn't look too off. There we go. I mean, this is so simple. That would have been so simple. And still, again, same goes for this building as for this building. If you're done with it and you want to make sure that this is one building again, just merge them together and you're perfectly fine. So we have one last thing to show you, and this is something really nice, and I hope that you guys appreciate that as well, because building is not only a building, right? Building is also meanwhile, it is also about how can I save pieces. So you have seen me building, and this is why I use my blueprint again. You have seen me building the pavilion for my studios with the bobsled coaster. Where is it again? Let me just show you where this is. Where is the pavilion? Can I just... pavilion, is it called like that? Oh yeah, I did even call it like that. So, this one... Where is it? Where is it? There we go. This pavilion, and I'm just going to... Well, put that down. There we go. You know, I used the... bobsleds to make kind of the wooden structure, to make the wooden pavilion on top of it. You know, because basically, if I would have made that out of planks, the game would already lag because I need to use a million pieces for it, and you don't want that. So one single thing which is pretty annoying as well is to build, and I'm going to show you this right now, to build fences. And now let me just grab a fence, please. Go into all. I'm gonna use this fence, for example. I mean, this is pretty much the way you would build a fence. Just put it down from the menu and go alongside the path. It is always, you know, if you go to a tighter curve, you need to use a shorter piece of fence. Pretty annoying, actually, if you do that for all the pathways and stuff. So there is an option to use coasters for it, and I like to use various coasters. You have to, you know, you have to test around a little bit. So I remember that, for example, the monorail coaster. Where's the monorail? Let me just type that in. Whoops. Why is that even not called monorail coaster? How is this thing called? Isn't that called monorail coaster? Wait a second. Do I have any filter activated? No, I haven't. There we go. Oh, single rail. Oh god. Okay, single rail. Wait. The cool thing about the single rail coaster is it has the if you go for this one, so the chain lift, it has the little fence on the left hand side, and it is, and that's the cool thing about that, you can just use the optional catwalk over here, and then you can also rotate it. I mean, it doesn't look nice at the first glance, but it has a certain meaning why you should do that. So you go into this direction, that's perfectly fine, and now I need to reposition my coaster for a second. And let me just move that. Okay, we have the pathway in the way right now, so what I need to do is move that over here. And can I just... I think that's fine for now. And then you go into the coaster. And what you can do right now is make sure that you then don't do anything stupid with the rotation or whatsoever of this thing. You have to make sure that you deselect the angle snap option for the moment. Then just slightly move it down until you have the perfect angle. There we go. That's the perfect angle because we have just reached the bottom part. And then you can just simply use it as a fence tool. I have seen that already, so it's not me that invented the trick. I have seen that already, but I think it's so useful. I mean, you know, you could just use now just the whole thing. Okay, that might be a bit too long, for example, but you can just make that perfectly fine if you want to. I'm just doing it a little bit more like that now. So as you can see, it is a little bit finicky to set up, but as soon as you have set it up, it is so super easy to use. You can just basically go in and just make the whole pathway now with a fence. And you can even confirm it to terrain if needed, which is also a lot easier than it would have been before. The only single trick about this is, and this is what I haven't figured at the beginning how to do it, is that you just tilt. Make sure that you tilt the coaster beforehand, as I did it over here. So that's the important part, to make sure that the coaster track is really going down into the bottom part, because that makes sure that you don't have this sticking around. So what you do then is just select these pieces that you don't need. So until over there, and just select everything, delete it, just hit escape, done. So there we have a perfect fence alongside the road. What do you want to do if you want to move? Oops, can I just select that, please? What's happening if I want to move that down? Well, you just move it up and down how you want to. Then you can also, can I just select this one, please? Do I need to go into the ground to select it? Yes. You can also pretty easily then recolor this if you want to. I just want to have a more brownish thing over here. So bam, brownish. So if you would have this as a whole fence made manually, you would need to select all of these pieces. And as long as it's only one piece, you can also recolor all of them. Obviously, you can. But as soon as you use, for example, a certain pillar and another piece that is the top part of it, you are screwed, because you can't select them all and recolor them in one go. And, well, yeah, this is way easier to make it with a coaster. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to make a lot of usage of this in this pack. One little comment though on it, what I made when I tested it is, and I would highly recommend you would do this as well, is make sure that you have one coaster set up already, and whoopsie, can I just, okay, delete everything except this tilted piece over here. Can I just delete that? Okay, so this is all deleted. Go in and also delete this. Can I just select the station, please? Delete the station, and I can't really, why can't I click this? There we go. And then you can also delete this piece, so that you have only the tilted piece next to it. And I even, okay, there is a small piece, you still need to get rid of it, so that you have this piece available. As you cannot, which is a little bit of a pity, you cannot duplicate a coaster, you would then need to save that as a blueprint. And I like to call it then, for example, make a new blueprint and you call it fence steel, I don't know, 1, for example. And then you call fence steel 1. Create the blueprint, and you can always grab it from the blueprint, because it's way easier if you just, for example, go in here. Blueprint now. Oops, I need to just go in here, and then you type in fence. I have the fence piece over here. The good thing about this is you can then position it where you actually need it. So for example here, just move it into ground. The cool thing, it doesn't collide with anything because it's not a station, it's only the track. And then you just can put it wherever you need it. For example here, go into building mode, and you can right away, if you select that, you can right away build your fence. So that's pretty easy. So as I said, the effort to just set it up once is it's just so small compared to what you can do with it later on, and you can do that with pretty much all of the coasters. Some of the coasters have the issue though that, okay, let me just, I'm just taking the time now to show you. You can still use them, it's not a problem at all. So for example, if we go into the wooden coaster, let me just use this wooden coaster for example. Just put it somewhere, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. You see it has two different sides, and this doesn't make sense if you want to make a wider path than this is. You can still go into the normal mode, drag it completely back, make sure to tilt it again, there we go. So important thing about this is that you go straight again, and now you can use the wooden piece as well. See, because this is now, if you would see, that would be the bottom line, and then you have a wooden fence. So it's pretty simple actually. All you need to do is then delete again the rest of it, move it down into the bottom as soon as it is all kind of sunken into the ground. You can't see about this, and so you can just prepare a lot of these different fences and use pretty much a fencing tool. It's pretty much a fencing tool, I have to say. You can do this with all kind of coaster types. You can also use this coaster type on the right hand side over here if you want a more futuristic fence. So you can make fancy things. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Alright guys, but that should be it about this tutorial. I hope that I can edit it a bit more structured, that you can really talk about these different lessons, because I recorded over 40 minutes now, and I tried to bring that down to a little bit less so you guys really know what I was talking about in terms of really useful stuff rather than just talking. Anyways, I really hope that you appreciated this little tutorial. I hope it really helped you find out new building techniques and kind of get more used to it and be quicker in what you want to build and so on and so forth. But for now, that should be it, and I hope to see you again in the next episode. Bye bye guys. We should be hiding out wherever we may find love that's flowing on.